In August of 2019, we were at the lowest point in the previous bear market, and a project called ETHLend was trading at $0.003 per token. 1 year later, they did a 100-for-1 reverse split as they rebranded to Aave. Then in the summer of 2021, they were able to hit an all-time high of $660. That's a mind-boggling 2,000x from bottom to top. It wasn't just Aave either. Several other projects were able to pull similar gains from their bear market low to their subsequent bull market high. So it's definitely possible to get these life-changing gains. But the question is, how do we? Because it's clearly not easy, or else everyone would be millionaires by now. Well, I've crafted a bear market strategy that I believe optimizes our chances of getting these gains. And it really boils down to a 3-step plan. In just a minute, we're going to discuss how we can tell if a project can rocket like Aave. But first, we gotta start at step number 1, which is to change your mindset when it comes to bear markets.
I'm here to talk about success.
Look, bear markets are tough. After getting pummeled for months, most people lose hope and feel like giving up. I saw this with my own eyes in 2019 when people in my community swore off crypto forever. But it's actually at that point, the lowest of lows, when it's the best time to buy. Be fearful when others are greedy, and greedy when others are fearful. The best part is, valuations would be a bargain at that point. It wouldn't be like the bull market where any random hyped up project will launch with a $10 billion market cap. So in reality, you'd be getting much better deals than at any time during the bull market. Now, something else you gotta be ready for are all the loud critics who will be coming out of the woodwork. And they always say things with zero nuance. For example, people love to say 99% of projects are going to zero. I mean, okay, that could be true, but it's not really useful. First, that still leaves hundreds of projects that will survive. And second, it's not completely random which projects will die. We can kinda tell already. Just go scroll down CoinMarketCap. The projects ranked 500 or below are likely already dead, whereas the top 100 projects are much more likely to survive for the midterm. And it's among those survivors where we can find the next Aave. Take Polygon's Matic, for example. Its all-time low in 2019 was $0.003, while in 2021, it reached an all-time high of almost $3. That's a whopping 1000x gain. Or Chainlink's Link. It went from around 20 cents in 2019 to $50 in 2021, pulling a solid 250x. Even ADA, which I'm not the biggest fan of, went from around 2 cents to $3 from their bottom to top. That is an impressive 150x. You see my point? The people who didn't give up and were still active in the bear market are the ones who got rewarded the most. But the question becomes, how do we find those projects? Because even the examples I shared don't seem to have anything in common. Well, that is a great point. That's why I took a big step back and studied all these bear market winners to create an evaluation framework. And that brings us to step number 2 of this 3-part plan, which is to research and identify projects with the most potential. So the overarching approach here is to do incredibly thorough fundamental analysis and use that to decide whether or not you want to invest. You gotta dissect the project like crazy so that you understand it like the back of your hand. This was Grandpa Buffett's strategy with stocks too. He said he would much rather invest in 3 to 6 companies that he knows inside and out instead of diversifying into like 20 stocks. Because this way you can be very confident that your picks are high quality and you can hold them with conviction until something changes. But now the question becomes, what criteria should we use to judge these projects? Well, unfortunately, there's not one universal set of criteria. You really have to come up with your own criteria to look for and decide how you're going to weigh different aspects. And by weigh, I just mean how important you feel that aspect is for your analysis. Just to give some inspiration, here are 10 categories that you could use for your own criteria. First is valuation or market cap. During the bear market, valuations should be relatively low. But if you're looking for 100x or 1000x potential, you still gotta be realistic. You can't take a coin with like $1 billion market cap and be like, oh sure, it's gonna rocket to 1 trillion during the bull run, right? Like that's just not going to happen unless we go through hyperinflation or whatnot. But my point is, you gotta target coins with lower market caps, but are still solid per the other categories. Speaking of which, the second category is active roadmap. By this, I mean the team is still actively building their project and delivering on the milestones that they set before. During the bear market, so many teams just quit and give up. but they don't make it super obvious with like a big announcement or anything. They kind of just slowly fade away into the ether. So this is really important to figure out, because investing in a project without an active roadmap is like setting your money on fire. But honestly, an active team is just a bare minimum to ask for, because we really should be looking at my third category, which is team quality. Like, do they have a solid pedigree? And do they have the experience necessary to do what they're trying to do? Personally speaking, this is one of the most important categories that I look for when evaluating a project, because a good team can always pivot even if their initial idea is bad, but a bad team is likely going to fail no matter what they do. Now, one thing that does help a team a lot is my fourth category, funding and resources. Like, a good team can get a lot done, but they still can't achieve their goals if they run out of money early. So it's very important to find out how much capital they have saved up, just to make sure they can keep building throughout the bear market and make it to the next bull market. Now, one way teams can stay flush with money is with my fifth category, revenue generation. In the past, asking crypto projects to generate revenue was unheard of. But nowadays, quite a few crypto projects do generate revenue, whether it's decentralized exchanges, lending protocols, or even play-to-earn games. So finding a crypto project that does have cash flow could be a very strong sign that they will survive and thrive. And this also kind of relates to my sixth category, which is project utility. Like, is it legitimately useful? And is there real adoption from their users? Because if there are people genuinely using it, then that makes it much more likely for them to rocket once the bull market arrives. After all, a bull market adds rocket fuels to things that were already solid before. Now, something I haven't mentioned yet, but is still super important, is my seventh category, which is tokenomics. You gotta look at their token distribution, their unlock schedule, and their token utility just to make sure everything is fair and makes sense. Honestly, I've seen bad projects succeed with good tokenomics, and good projects fail due to bad tokenomics. So I highly recommend you dig for a project's tokenomic details and make sure it won't hinder any future growth. On a little higher level, you can also evaluate my eighth category, which is a project's niche. There are so many niches in crypto, like lending protocols, dexes, meme coins, layer 2s, etc. And many times in the past, we've seen entire niches take off together and have their own seasons per se. Those were incredible to see. Like, one project would lead the way, and then all the small ones in the same category would rocket as well. So we definitely want to analyze their niche and see if it's promising, both now and in the future. The future is actually more important, because if we want to find the most lucrative niche, we have to come up with a hypothesis of how the future will look like, and ideally that project's niche will be a huge part of that future. If your hypothesis ends up matching with reality, then jackpot. This is also similar to my ninth category, which is competitive advantage. Like I say, there are multiple projects in any given category, so we gotta ask the question, why this project over another one that's similar and is a competitor? If there are strong advantages that you can identify, then that should give you more confidence that yours will do better and lead the pack per se. Next up is my 10th category, which is community strength. Community honestly sounds like a meaningless buzzword these days, but it's actually quite powerful, because even if a project doesn't have the strongest utility or the best tokenomics, a loyal community can still carry it further than we can imagine. That's because these community members are using their own hard-earned money to consistently buy the token, and they're also strong evangelists for the project, which is like free marketing for them. So while I don't think it's absolutely necessary for success, I for sure would rather invest in a project with a strong community than without one. Now, here's the thing. Of course, we want to find projects that score high in all 10 categories. But if you study historical projects that performed well, sometimes they were weak in certain categories, but strong in other ones. So there's no definitive formula for identifying gems. And that's why we gotta follow step number 3 in our 3-part plan, which is to deploy our capital strategically. The first thing to do is to decide your portfolio composition. Like with these bear market picks, a lot of them will have smaller market caps, so they're definitely more risky than Bitcoin or Ether per se. So I wouldn't personally make these picks too large a chunk of my portfolio. Perhaps 20% for myself personally, but you could do lower or higher depending on your risk appetite. Now, after you decide how much you're going to allocate, it's time to spread out your capital into multiple smaller bets that you've selected. Ideally, these projects score well on several of your categories and are from different niches. You don't want to put all your eggs into one basket after all. Another very important thing to do is to deploy your capital slowly. The worst thing you can do is to get over-eager. Like, oh, the bottom is in, it's time to go all in. No, that's what I did before, and it was the worst mistake I've ever made. You don't want to run out of dry powder too quickly, as that is the biggest cardinal sin during a bear market. So perhaps you could dollar cost average into your picks across a multi-month period. You could also keep an eye on the macroeconomic forces, but don't try to time that too much, or else you may miss out on the opportunity completely. Now, once you have your capital deployed, it's time to create an exit plan. I won't go too deep here, but you could dollar cost average back out, or even set predetermined take profit levels. One thing I strongly recommend is to keep a portion as a moon bag. Just in case it does go 100x or 1000x, then you'll be able to capture some of that upside. So what do you think about this 3-step plan? Personally, I'm gonna follow it as closely as possible. I hope that we can all come back in a couple of years with some big success stories to share. Now, just be sure that you're evaluating tokenomics properly when you start researching all these projects. But if you don't know how to do that, then watch this video for a quick explainer. See ya!